Okay, cool. Good morning. Welcome everyone. My name is Anubhav. I am part of the product management team at Netscope, and today I'm going to talk about CASB modernization and how CASB AI-driven SaaS security and control is very important in this era. Okay. So um, so we've seen increased cloud use and modern data sharing practices where we've seen a lot of hybrid workforce where people are working from home, people are working from office with the advent of COVID and potentially having that model go along. All of this hybrid workforce requires faster, easier, and more reliable access to all of the applications, whether they're in the SaaS, whether they are private applications with the reliable user experience, right? We've also seen a shift to the cloud where more and more applications are being actually hosted in the cloud versus your private data centers because it's just easier to host them in the cloud. There's unlimited compute. There are a lot of services available. So we've seen all of these applications that customers want to use being hosted on SaaS versus being hosted traditionally in private data centers, right? And as a result of this, we've seen data sprawl where one, the data amount has increased for all of these applications, but we also see data sprawled across, like I said, cloud as well as private data centers wherever applications are hosted. But we see a lot of data sprawl, which brings with it the risk of data breaches and compliance, right? So that's where we are seeing the modern enterprises moving towards. And what you see here is basically the cloud sprawl that I talked about, where you have your SaaS applications, your corporate SaaS applications like the Salesforces and the Office 365s of the world. You have your corporate IaaS, AWS, GCP, Azure, and you have unmanaged SaaS and IaaS and unmanaged SaaS and IaaS as well, which is things that are unmanaged or not traditionally sanctioned in your environment, and you have users across all locations, right? Whether they're headquarters, sitting in the headquarters, whether sitting in their branches, or like I said, with the remote workforce, a lot of people working from coffee shops, from their homes, and all of these people need to reach out to all of these corporate, all of these cloud parts, or the SaaS applications or the IaaS hosted in the cloud. So that's what we've seen, a lot of stuff happening there, right? This requires a more granular data security approach, right? So with these applications hosted everywhere and they're becoming more and more complex, what you probably want to achieve is a more granular data security approach when it comes to accessing these applications. And this granular approach could come in the form of context, getting more context in the terms of what are the activities that you're trying to perform on these SaaS applications, what are the risks associated with these SaaS applications. You might want to distinguish between instances, corporate and personal instances of your applications, because this is probably one of the most easy way to kind of leak your data, where you could probably download something from your corporate OneDrive and upload to your personal OneDrive, right? So you might want to have that distinction between it's a corporate instance versus a personal instance, and have specialized policies for those two types of accesses, right? And then finally, you have a lot of these, you need user context as well, right? Not just in terms of the risk score of the user, but also in terms of whether the user is internal, whether it's external. Because if you have those that user context, right, you can kind of control the access control that you want with those types of environments where you have both internal and external users. A classic case is Slack threads, where you probably can invite external participants as well. So you might want to disable certain activities like downloads of sensitive information from those Slack threads where you have like external participants as well, right? So so it becomes very interesting where the space is becoming very complex. There are more and more capabilities available, obviously, to improve productivity, but also brings with it a lot more granular approach that you need towards security on this one, right? So I'll talk a little bit about traditional web proxies. So we traditionally had the web proxies, the blue coats of the world, right, which were traditional web proxies that just focused on web, right, and they were very good at looking at everything that was web. However, there was a huge gap, which we saw, a huge blind spot that we saw, specifically when you talked about SaaS applications, when you talked about custom apps, when you talked about IaaS, shadow IT. So these were all blind spots, right? And these blind spots started increasing as more and more more and more applications actually moved to the SaaS model where they had SaaS applications versus web pages. We saw an increase in this blind spot because SaaS represented a significant portion of your traffic, right? The other thing was these legacy proxies were not built to scale for decryption. So they are not able to do decryption at scale, and that inherently means that you cannot do the content inspection on top of the data that's going out, on top of the traffic that's going out to these SaaS applications, including DLP as well as threat, right? And we saw the threat and data risks rise, right? A lot of the malware was delivered through these SaaS applications. A lot of data theft increased for these SaaS applications. Data exfiltration to personal cloud storage instances increased. So that's where I think a lot of these legacy proxies were not able to were not able to secure your environment, right? Because of the blind spots and the lack of content inspection. So then came in like a separate point product solution, which was a legacy CASB architecture, where you basically have a separate web proxy for all of your web traffic. Then you have a legacy CASB architecture for all of your SaaS traffic. However, that was not scalable. You had to maintain two products. They had different consoles. They had different operational needs, and that just did not fit in very well and made it operationally very challenging for customers to adopt the secure usage of SaaS applications plus web usage, right? So that's where the next-gen swig comes into the picture, where you combine traditional web proxy capabilities with the next-gen or modernized CASB capabilities, and that together comes together as something called as NG Swig. So you have a platform that gives you the ability to control access and do content inspection on your web traffic, everything that's going out to the regular websites. Plus, you also have the CASB inline solution, which is more focused on sanctioned and corporate and personal instances of your SaaS applications, as well as giving you visibility into shadow IT. And the all of the capabilities around inspection, around decryption, around threat, around DLP kind of run parallelly across these two components, right? So you have a common platform, you have the common inspection services, you have a common UI, you have common policies. It makes it operationally easier, giving you the best security as well across all of your components, right? And then you add on top of it the CASB API, the API CASB solution, which is more of a out of band inspection where uh, you might you might want to do inline inspection as well. However, you probably want to do out of band inspection where you go out to these SaaS applications, the corporate sanctioned SaaS applications, and scan the data that is there to make sure that that data doesn't have any leakage, the data doesn't have any activities that you don't want to have, the sharing permissions are okay. So that's where the CASB API comes into the picture, very complementary to inline controls which are given by CASB inline and Swig, right? And again, like I said, the Netscope content inspection of threat protection as well as data protection will fit in within CASB API as well. So when you're scanning out of band, you could also perform, in addition to doing the regular activity control or instance control or access control, you can potentially also perform and scan the files available in these SaaS applications for threat and DLP. Okay. Underlying all of these three capabilities that I talked about sits the Netscope Zero Trust Engine. The Netscope Zero Trust Engine is kind of the fundamental the fundamental bridge that sits and allows you to do and basically provides you the granular access control that we talk about, right? And it consists of multiple attributes that we scan in real time or as out of band and provide you the ability to control access based on these attributes, right? Some of these attributes would include identity trust, who the user is, what the user group is, the device trust, whether the device that you are trying to reach out from is a managed device or an unmanaged device. We have device posture as well. One of the questions in the Kahoot where you can actually look at the device posture and basically mark the device as managed or unmanaged depending on whether you have certain software installed, whether your antivirus is up to date, and things like that, right? Then you have the location trust. You can also control the source location from where you are coming from, whether it's home, whether it's office, whether it's roaming, and things like that. Uh, then comes the app trust. This is where we actually determine whether the application, what the application is. So we are very granularly able to determine what the application is, right, based on multiple parameters. And we also have risks associated with these applications. So our research teams manually go ahead and research against all of these common SaaS applications or top SaaS applications. They run through multiples of tests against them and actually classify that application as high risk, medium risk, and give you a risk score for that application so that you can use that risk score when you're creating your policies, right? So that's what we called as is the traditional that's what we have on the layer 3, layer 4, layer 7 side of the house. But what we also have is something that we call as layer 8, which is where you get into things beyond all of the things that I talked about, and things like instance detection, right, where you know whether it's a personal instance or or a corporate instance. What is the activity that I'm trying to do? I might want to allow a download. I might want to allow download, but not allow an upload. Or I might allow you to browse that particular SaaS application. But when you try and download something, you want to make sure that you go through content inspection or DLP, so you're not downloading something that is confidential onto your personal laptop, right? Um, then you have the risky behavior, which is kind of very similar to what I talked about from the app score perspective, the risk score. You also have the risk score for a user through our UEBA engine, which allows you to allow which gradually. So the UEBA solution actually um, uh, looks at all of the all of the metrics that we get from our logs from the inspection and actually risk score a particular user, and based on that you can allow or deny or maybe step up authentication for a user that has a lower risk score, right? And then finally, with that, the last part that we talk about here is data trust slash threat trust, where the content inspection services kick in. You have the class leading DLP solution that Netscope has. It gives you a lot of granularity to control what data you want to be uploaded, what data you want to be downloaded, and then the threat inspection that does things like malware detection, things like phishing link detection, and also the sandboxing solution, which allows you to, which prevents you from zero day threats as well, right? So that's kind of the zero trust engine. Combining these attributes together, we create very powerful and very granular control of what data is going to your SaaS application and what is getting downloaded from your SaaS applications, right? And then a nice touch on top of it is the ability to coach the end user so that they're not scratching their head onto, oh, why was this particular file not being able to download it, right? So you can coach the user with custom messages saying that, okay, this particular file contains sensitive data, that's why it is not under the corporate policy, so please submit a justification, for example, if you want to proceed, right? And the user can submit a justification, and that kind of allows them to go ahead with that particular download. However, you have that captured as a justification, so that all kind of comes together and sits in nicely on top of user experience, providing a better user experience for your end users, in addition to maintaining your security, right? Um, I'll jump into the capabilities now. So I'm not going to talk about the traditional Swig. I'm going to more focus today on CASB inline and CASB API, which is think of it as the layer 8 capabilities that I talked about in the previous slides, right? So if you look at it, right, CASB inline is consider it as a like an inline control specifically focused on your SaaS applications, right? Whether they're corporate applications, whether they're personal instances of those applications, whether it's shadow IT, something that you haven't sanctioned, right? So the first thing that the CASB solution will give you is very granular visibility, right? So you have dashboards which give you, okay, I have so many SaaS applications being used in my environment, right? So you get that granular visibility. What are the top users using those applications? What are the top risky applications being used? And things like that, right? What are the activities for those applications? So it gives you granular visibility. The second thing that it gives you is, like I said, granular access control, where you can control access to these SaaS applications based on the plethora of attributes that I talked about in the previous slide, right? So that's effectively what CASB inline is. Some of the differentiators that we have with CASB Inline, specifically with Netscope CASB Inline, is the concept of a app catalog. An app catalog is an aggregation of about 80,000 applications that have been vetted by Netscope, and we give you a lot of granular details for those applications. What is that application? What category does it belong to? Is it like a cloud storage application? Is it like a collaboration application? Or is it an HR application? So it'll give you that capability. Plus, it will also give you a risk score for that application, right? What is the risk score for that application, right? And then also a granular um, checks that we do specifically around what is the certification of that application. Does that application have the right integrations with identity providers? Does that application so things like that, right? So you get a lot of don't just get a like a list of applications, but you also get more granular details around the security, inbuilt security of those applications, right? And that's how we determine the score of that application. The second thing is activity and instance detection. This is also something that is very unique to Netscope, where we have something called as our dedicated connectors for these SaaS applications, where the team actually builds signatures to determine that for this particular application, let's say Gmail, right? What is the activity that the user is trying to do? Are they trying to download? Are they trying to send an email? Are they trying to log in? Are they trying to make some changes in the settings? Are they trying to forward an email? So all of that granular activity that you can perform within that SaaS application is actually detected using these dedicated connectors that we have, and that's available for visibility as well as access control. The next thing is instance detection, right? This is another thing that is very unique to Netscope, where you can actually determine whether it's a corporate or a personal instance of Gmail, right? So you might want to potentially have uh, different access control settings for your corporate instance and for your personal instance. Like I talked about, for a personal instance, you might not want to down allow them to download an email if the device posture is not compliant or is not managed, right? That way is what you say, and the way you configure the managed device posture is by saying that is Netscope client installed, right? And active, right? So that basically gives you a lot of control on what people can do with personal instances, specifically on corporate devices, right? So that's where you combine a bunch of the attributes that I talked about in the previous slide and make very complex and very granular and powerful policies. CCI risk scoring, I already talked about. User coaching, I already talked about. So all of these are things that are unique to Netscope and differentiators in Netscope, and give you a very granular access control as well as better user experience for the end user, so that they can go ahead and perform their tasks productively. However, the security is maintained for the company, okay, for the enterprise. So some of the use cases about CASB inline, I'll quickly jump through these use cases. The first one is shadow IT discovery, right? Uh, I think the first thing everyone wants to know in an organization is, okay, what is my usage of SaaS applications? I don't know what people are using. Until I know what people are using, I cannot control access to those applications, right? So first things first, get visibility into what your end users are reaching out to, what are the activities that they're performing, what are the files that they're downloading, and things like that, right? So once you get that visibility, from there you can actually say that, okay, this particular application looks like it's not needed for my corporate use. I will probably make it a unsanctioned application and then block access to it, right? So that's how you kind of start from discovery and then build strong policies so that you don't hamper productivity. Instance awareness, like I talked about, uh, personal, corporate, partner instances, we can do the detection of these instances and allow you to have granular access control for these instances. Um, Risky activity control, again, talking about the ability to identify these activities very granularly and allow you to control access on these. And then this is the real-time access control, right? So allowing you to create real-time policies so that you can control access in real time through all of the attributes that we've talked about. So case in point here would be that I would want to allow access to, let's say, if I'm using Google Drive as my corporate cloud storage solution, I would want to uh, allow access to uploading and downloading files from Google Drive, but not from, let's say, Box, because Box is something that we don't use in my corporate environment, right? So you can do those things. Uh, so this is also very important, right? So access is one part of the puzzle, right, where you want to restrict the access to only something that you need to access, right? However, even for uh, even for flows, or even for applications that you want to allow access, or you have to allow access to allow for the day-to-day running of your company, you might want to, or you would want to detect threats and data, sensitive data being uploaded or downloaded from those sanctioned applications as well. And that's where our the DLP engine and the threat engine kick in, where you could create policies where for things that you allow, you detect for malware, you detect for phishing links, you detect for sensitive data, PCI, PII, all of that information. And then if you detect some of the data, you might want to block that particular file upload, right? So that's where it's an added layer on top of things that you want to allow, and gives you that peace of mind that even if I allow corporate usage, anything that's going or coming down from there does not have threats, does not have sensitive data, right, as required. And then finally, use real-time user coaching. I talked about this, but I think this is something that generally uh, kind of goes unnoticed, but this is really powerful in the sense that yes, security is one thing, but you also want to make sure that the end user experience for your users is actually accurate, right? And they don't have to reach out to your service desk every time. Your service desk doesn't get inundated with a lot of these calls, right? So giving them the right context when you are taking an action like block is really important, so that they understand that why was a particular action that I was trying to perform for the SaaS applications blocked, right? And this is a classic way of doing that. It goes a step further, like I talked about, where you can also allow them to continue, but they need to provide justifications. Okay. So moving on to API CASB. So we talked everything about inline right now. I wanted to spend a few minutes on API CASB as well, which is our out-of-band inspection. So yes, you want to control everything inline. You want to make sure that nothing that your end users don't access something that's not sanctioned. You want to make sure that anything that is also sanctioned also goes through threat inspection and content inspection. However, you would also want to do an out-of-band inspection and make sure that anything that's stored in your corporate SaaS and IaaS environments is does not contain sensitive data, right? Or does not have threat and malware, for example, right? So that's where CASB API comes into the picture. So what you do here is you hook into the corporate instances of your SaaS applications, and they provide APIs. So you can basically hook the Netscope CASB API solution into them, and we will do a retro scan of the files, the retro scan of the permissions that you have there, and will basically flag out things that are malicious, things that are sensitive, and you can pick and choose a lot more granular capabilities in here as well. So talking about some use cases of CASB API. I think the first thing is discover and govern shadow IT. So this is again another use case where you might wanna hook into SaaS applications and kind of get the visibility of what are the files that are stored in these SaaS applications, what is the activity controls that we have in these SaaS applications, so allow you to govern the shadow IT solutions that you might have. Like I said, protect data everywhere. So not just inline, but also the ability to protect data after the fact, right? So just in case if things leak through your inline solutions, either because of misconfigured policies or because of the fact that you had to allow it at that point in time for business justifications, you can come back to it later and then run a retroactive scan, and then find out things that are not compliant with your data policies, and then eventually mitigate them as well. Defend from cloud threats. A similar line as protection threats is also important. You don't want malware You don't want malware and things like that, and phishing links within your documents sitting within your sanctioned SaaS applications, right? Because you don't know who will download those things, right? So the idea here is to also scan these files for malware, and make sure that these files don't contain malware, and if they do, you basically mitigate that risk by deleting those files from your SaaS applications. Insider risk, fixing oversharing, making sure that the sharing permissions that you have for these SaaS applications are not oversharing. So sometimes, a lot of times, as you all know, a lot of times the entry point into these data leakages or attacks, or whatever these attacks we see from hackers is actually human driven. It's either a person within the company that has access and they target them, or it's like an insider, right? As a malicious insider who is trying to do something, right? So for those, it's important to make sure that you control the permissions for these SaaS applications. Make sure that they're not overshared, right? Sensitive information or sensitive documents have the right permissions, so you can control that. You can get that visibility and control that through CASB API, right? And then making sure that data transfer is also controlled as well, right? So all of these things allow you to mitigate insider risk. Supporting privacy and compliance, the ability to make sure that all of your files and all of your SaaS applications that you have are compliant with your PCI, HIPAA, GDPR, CCPA. So all of these capabilities are also available within. You can accomplish this through API CASB as well. And then finally, fixing misconfigurations. This is actually part of CSPM, SSPM, where you can actually read through the configuration of your SaaS applications, and then the ability to SaaS applications or your IaaS vendors, and the ability for you to continuously audit them, and then remediate the misconfigurations that you might have, which could lead to a security risk. That's the other capability that comes within SSPM/API CASB. Okay, so I think this is probably the last slide that I have. I wanted to talk about so with the solutions that I talked about, how do you actually reduce the risk in 7 steps, right? So I think the first line of defense is obviously going to be your inline CASB, right? Where you are able to get visibility into shadow AIT, into shadow SaaS usage, as well as control access, and perform content inspection in real time on traffic that is going to these SaaS applications and coming back from these SaaS applications, right? So that's the first line of defense. Then you have the configuration, secure configuration, which I talked about with SSPM CASB, where you want to read the configuration from all of these SaaS applications, corporate SaaS applications, and make sure that the configuration is according to the best security posture, right? So you have that visibility. You can compare it against guidelines that we have, and then potentially mitigate that with the controls that we give you, so that you can tighten the configuration, so that you don't have rogue configuration that allows oversharing or allows malicious intent, right? So that's where the CASB, SSPM CASB comes into the picture. And then finally, the last part of this is CASB API, where you want to see and secure everything in app. So anything that potentially got missed out through inline CASB, you might want to go and retroactively out of band scan it and make sure that the data is right there. The data that is there is right, and you don't have malicious data, you don't have sensitive data in the wrong folders and things like that, right? And the permissions for sharing for the sensitive folders is accurate and according to what you want it to be. So that's how you go through through the multiple steps that you have to secure your SaaS applications, right? I do not have a slide on AI specific stuff, but since I have a few minutes, I'll probably talk about it a little bit, right? So with the advent of AI, right? It's the challenges, the set of challenges that we see are probably similar, right? That you saw with the advent of SaaS applications, right? Making sure that people have the right access to, so first, getting visibility into all of the AI usage, Number two, um, uh, making sure that people have the right access to the GenAI applications. Number three, making sure that sensitive data is not leaked out to these AI applications, and malicious data is not downloaded from these AI applications, right? So the set of challenges are the same. The scale and the tools to deliver it might differ. And Netscope is working actively on extending our CASB API as well as CASB inline solutions to with specific features that will allow you to get the three things that I talked about: visibility, access control, um, and content inspection on top of these AI applications. Like an example would be, I want to let's say I want to first get visibility into a SaaS application, into your AI applications, right? So you have already a Netscope dashboard that gives you visibility into all of the AI usage that you have, right? Specific to AI, right? All of your AI applications. These are not SaaS applications, these are AI applications, right? Number two, do I have access control on AI applications? Yes, you do, right? We have very granular access control for things like ChatGPT, Gemini, whether it's instance detection, whether it's activity detection, like it's a prompt or a post. So we are able to detect those activities for GenAI applications and allow you to control access. And number three, can I run threat inspection and DLP on data going to these GenAI applications? Yes, you can. Right? Netscope has enhanced its connectors to not just look for files that we can scan for SaaS applications, but also the prompt and the response that's coming back from these GenAI applications. We can look through that prompt and response, and we can send it to content inspection services that we have DLP and thread, and they're able to determine whether the prompt or the response contained sensitive information. In case of prompts, you would not want to send sensitive information out to GenAI, ChatGPT, for example, sensitive files. The response coming back from GenAI, you want to scan it for malicious files, for malicious code, for phishing links. So you apply threat on the response coming back, right? So that's how Netscope is extending the capabilities that we have for SaaS applications squarely into GenAI applications, and it's very easy for you to configure because it's the same services, it's the same policies, it's the same profiles. You just are able to apply them in the context of AI. I think we have another separate session on AI where I think Sanjay will talk a lot more about it. So stay tuned for that one. But I just wanted to give you a teaser into what Netscope can do and how Netscope is just taking over what we've learned over so many years for SaaS applications into AI applications. Okay. With that, I think I'm done with my content. Thank you.